This race versus class thing again. It's the issue of our time, right? It's not new. You can trace it back to the 60s. And I've pointed out a few times that it's older than that. It's the very idea that the United States was founded on. You get the white and black slaves fighting over race, so they forget about class and don't fight us being the upper class, because then we're fucked. But the way it's begun to manifest itself over the last few years, one could posit, since Occupy has exposed larger fracture points that the Democratic primary seems to have taken to a boil. The debate is not really about race versus class anymore, if it ever was at all. It's now just really all about class. And when I say that, what I mean is that it divides the left very cleanly into liberals and socialists. If you think that it's all about race, what you're arguing for is equality of opportunity. So is it any surprise that you're voting for Clinton? You're not really that keen on the unrealistic ideas and lofty ideals that are attached to the left in the first place. What you actually want is a system that gives everybody a fair opportunity to climb up the hierarchy. So is it about race? It's not. It's about class, and your insistence that it not be abolished because you want to climb your way up a few rungs and be in a position of greater status and wealth. If we were to abolish class, how could you oppress anyone? You have a fundamentally competitive, Calvinist, market-oriented, capitalist outlook on society. You just want to make sure the rules are fair, that nobody is starting off from a privileged position. You don't have any problem with people oppressing other people. You just think that if you had been given a more of a fair shot in life, you'd have a better ability to oppress people. You're a liberal. But if you think it's all about class, you're focused more on equality of outcome. You're probably a Sanders supporter. Or you're a sad Clinton supporter that's very confused. When you argue for equal opportunities to education, it's because education is a human right. Not because you think everybody should have the same starting points. You think everybody should have equal access to healthcare too, because it's a right. It's not something you should have to earn or something that hard work should provide you with advantages in. You don't assign much importance to climbing up any kind of hierarchy because you don't think there should even be a hierarchy to climb at all. Or you may be a little bit of an existential nihilist about it too, meaning that ultimately who gives a fuck if you're who gives a fuck if you're rich or poor, right? You have a fundamentally cooperative, egalitarian, distributive justice-based, communitarian outlook on society, which should be designed so that people can enjoy their lives from cradle to grave, not spend almost all of it fighting for position in a chart. So you don't care about status or wealth or privilege or any of that kind of stuff. You just think life should be about enjoying yourself and all this stuff about evening out playing fields so that people have a better ability to climb up ladders. That has absolutely no appeal to you at all because you don't want to climb up the ladder in the first place. You just want to go hang out and smoke a joint and play guitar. It's a different concept of socialism. Maybe you don't want to just go hang out and smoke a joint and play guitar. Maybe you want to work together with the people around you, but you're still not particularly interested in becoming a boss or buying some status symbol, some gadget or some car or whatever. These things just are of no interest to you. I think you can connect these ideas to the different movements that have defined the last 5 years too. What was Occupy? Well, it was all about class, and is pretty strongly behind Sanders today. Black Lives Matter, on the other hand, was all about race. It seems to mostly be supporting Clinton. One is a fundamentally liberal movement with a fundamentally liberal outlook. The other is very much in the tradition of socialism. You see how that works out? See, I'm getting to be the armchair academic here. This is what we do. I understand that there is a need on the left to build broader movements that integrate different racial organizations. So the idea of breaking movements apart like this may be knee-jerked against by many. In fact, I probably made the same argument myself, but that is merely a restatement of my position. It's all about class. Now, is what you're saying any different? You know, if you're telling me, stop being divisive, are you saying anything other than that it's really just all about class? And so what are you're just sticking your fingers in your ears and lying, right? The more pushback I hear on the point, the more I realize that it's coming from viewpoints that are thoroughly liberal and generally do not wish to abolish class at all. Yeah, so you and I, we demand that it be all about class in order to build broader, movements that integrate all kinds of different people and races and all kinds of things. But then when we go and reach out to these groups, they tell us that they want to maintain class hierarchies. They just want to make it easier to get in it. So is there a common cause there? Is your browbeating really rational? Maybe we need some sober reflection here. Just to add to that, and again, I've been over this over the last month or so. The phase is closing. This may very well be my last comment about the election in the United States. And I've been over this a few times. The nature of the electoral system in the United States has become very racialized. I think everybody realizes that. I have a hard time making sense of the idea that people are voting for Clinton or Sanders because they're black or white. But it was certainly a little bit more obvious in the previous cycle, where Obama, I believe he got something like 96% of the black vote. Meaning if you're black, you're a Democrat. I mean, it's almost taken for granted. But if you're black, are you a liberal? If you're black, are you a socialist? If you're black, are you a conservative? You could be anywhere in the spectrum. And in fact, it happens to be that the areas of the country that have the highest concentration of black people are also the most conservative areas. And so it makes sense to conclude that you're not getting a lot of socialists. And you're only arguably even getting a lot of liberals. What you're really getting are a lot of conservatives. So when you set up these racial-based movements, and you look at them and they say, geez, these racial-based movements don't really, agree with much that I have to say. It's facile and wrong to suggest that makes me some kind of a racist. Rather, what it does is it points out that being a minority doesn't automatically make you a leftist. And in fact, that a lot of these minority organizations are not on the left of the spectrum. And it doesn't make sense to work with. But they need to find ways to umbrella themselves as well, right? They can't just call up the Republican, the local Republican writing association and be like, you know what, we realize that we're pretty right wing, so we're gonna join your party. There's no welcome mat that's gonna open up there. So if they want to take part at all, they don't have a choice. And they're uncomfortable with it. We're uncomfortable with it. Everybody's uncomfortable. And it creates all kinds of racial tensions that are in truth not racial tensions. And if they were understood properly, shouldn't be approached as racial tensions, but as ideological tensions and class tensions. If I go back, way back a few years, the Occupy period, the period directly after it, I'm railing against critical race theory pretty hard. I'm saying this is anti-scientific, it doesn't describe the world we live in, etc., etc. I'm fleshing that out a little bit. I'm building an argument. I'm not the only person that's doing it, but I really think that this needs to be addressed from the left. The right can throw around their arguments if they want. They're oftentimes not very convincing. And I don't like aligning with... I mean, it's the same basic problem, right? I'm arguing that I have a hard time aligning with groups that take these positions because they're too right-wing. And so what, I'm going to align with some right-wing group too? That doesn't make any sense, right? It's really necessary that we get a good criticism from the left. That's shielded from, your typical, See, the truth is a lot of the criticisms that you get from the right are racist, right? And it's because, they don't really understand the subtleties in the debate, right? Which is what I'm trying to get across here, is that there is a divide on the left. It makes a little bit more sense in countries that have traditions of a left. I'm not saying the United States doesn't have a tradition of a left, but it's disappeared, right? There's no memory of it. And in all functional ways, if a left is going to rebuild itself, it's going to have to rebuild itself from scratch. And if it's going to do that, it has to separate itself from liberals. The reason it's been lost is because it's been lost within liberalism. And it's not going anywhere unless it can separate itself from liberalism. And what you're seeing in this primary is exactly the debate that needs to continue. It needs to continue, and it needs to result in a division. And if people want to throw around, pejoratives, you want to call people racists, eventually they'll get tired of screaming nonsense, and they'll be silenced by lieu of their own ignorance, right? You can't shout lies forever. So it's people are gonna take the other side as well, right? People are gonna realize that they're liberals and go off on that side of things, and that's okay. We don't all have to agree, but I'm sick of being associated with liberalism. I'm sick of being lost within liberals. I'm sick of having to compromise with liberals. And I think that I'm reflecting a position that's widespread. Again, it's almost a dream scenario for the media to have it set up like this, based on race like this. And there's reasons why we've ended up with so many right-wingers, so many right-wing minorities lost in the left, and they should be on the right because the right won't accept them. But there's got to be some way to, separate things, because the left isn't going anywhere if it has to constantly. I mean, if it can't even get its own proposals forward because it's being silenced by minorities on the right that are right-wingers, right? And that were brought in for whatever reasons, or parked themselves there because they want to take part in the process. There has to be more there has to be more of a discerning process in what proposals are taken seriously, what ideas are worked towards. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with candidates like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama for forever. Because in order to win a primary in that party, you have to convince huge amounts of conservatives to vote for you. Again, who knows if this clicks, if people, realize this, that liberals and socialists are not the same thing. But see, there's a process leading up to this as well, right? A lot of people have tried to make the argument that liberals and socialists are the same thing. That socialists are liberals in a hurry, or whatever else. There have been movements in Canada for the Liberal and Socialist parties to merge into one. Similar things have happened in Britain. The Liberal Party doesn't really exist in Britain anymore, and the Socialist Party has been taken over by liberals, and etc. But they're not the same thing. They never have been the same thing. And actually, really the people that understand that the best are liberals in Canada. It's the only good arguments that I've ever seen come from liberals in Canada as to why, this doesn't make sense. And so maybe it should actually, come from both sides, right? I'm saying that the left needs to disassociate itself from the Democrats because it's never getting anywhere within the Democrats. Maybe the Democrats should tell the left to fuck off. And maybe, that's something else that might come out of this primary. I'm rambling, but I don't see where this goes. I know that the traditional thinking has always been about getting as many people together as you can. You want critical mass, and breaking through divisions and all these sorts of things. But when that tactic leads to you integrating groups that are fundamentally opposed to your core ideological positions, it questions whether that's a fruitful tactic or not, or whether it might make more sense to have walls built up to say, okay, a liberal is not a socialist. We don't want the same thing. We don't want the same societies. And maybe we should stop pretending that we do.